Hey everyone, it's Chris from SciFiReview.com, and in this episode I'm going to talk about the mini-series on CBS All Access, Stephen King's The Stand. Stay tuned. So this past Thursday, the final episode of CBS All Access miniseries, The Stand, from none other than, you got the book right here, Stephen King. I was really looking forward to this when I heard about it. I started watching it, and it's like, man, yeah, I don't even know. Well, I do know where to start, and that's the beginning. So this is 9 episodes long. Honestly, it should have been 19 or 20 if you're going to do this. And this is the problem that we had here in this. It was too short, and you tried to cram all this stuff into this, and so much was just left and ignored and not explored, and you just left going, wait, why did we even bother with some of this stuff? So I'm trying to think of how the best way to explain this is just to start at the beginning. There's this new sickness, which kind of makes this relevant in this day and age, doesn't it? There's this new disease out there called Captain Trips. Where that name came from, I'm sure it was in the book. I read this book like 30 years ago. I don't remember much about it. I considered rereading it for this, but I'm like, no, this book is, that thick. Ain't nobody got time for that. I'm like, well, I'll just watch the miniseries, and if I really get an itch, I'll read the book. What I did was I went back to the Cliff Notes for this video. I was like, oh yeah, I remember this now. So you've got a whole bunch of characters in this book, and this is part of the reason why it needs to be like 20 episodes, is you can't tell this story without all of these people and all of their stories. So you've got Stu Redman. He's a guy, he's played by James Marsden. He's just your average Joe from, doesn't matter where he's from, out east somewhere. He's immune. Turns out all these people are immune to Captain Trips. That's the whole reason they're even alive at this point. You got Stu Redman. You've got Franny Goldsmith, played by Odessa Young. You've got her neighbor, Harold Lauder, was played by Owen Teague. A different part of the world here in New York City, you've got Larry Underwood, pardon me if I butcher this, Jovan Adepo, and he meets Nadine Cross, played by Amber Heard. Who else? Oh yeah, of course we got Mother Abigail, which is kind of the Obi-Wan figure going on here. And there is, of course, Randall Flagg, the walking dude, played by Alexander Skarsgård. And a couple other characters that we need to know about, that we should have known more about, and this is part of the reason I'm saying this needed to be 20 episodes long, was characters like Lloyd, by Nat Wolff. You've got Ray, which was in the book was Ralph. They rewrote this character as a woman. I don't care about that. That's fine. But this character is just kind of, oh, here's Ray. And then she's in this, and we're like, well, okay, that's great. I mean, we don't know much about this person at all, and she's one of the chosen ones. Get there in a minute. Who's left? Oh, and you got Glenn Bateman, which is Greg Kinnear, another character that I thought was totally wasted. And there's other characters that are ancillary to the story, but they're absolutely necessary. Like, you got Trashy, which is played by Ezra Miller. It's like, I'm sitting there watching this going, where do I know this face from? The kid who played, Flash in the movies. One of the ones that pissed me off the most was character Nick Andros. The first episode here, this is where I think this thing fails after the first few episodes. Was the first episode we were introducing and building character of Stu and Harold and Franny. And then the second one, we're looking at Larry Underwood and eventually Nadine. Now, the first episode with Stu and Harold and Franny, it's important. Some of this stuff, that was unnecessary. The one with Larry Underwood, where he's going through the streets of New York with this other woman, and then eventually meets up with Nadine. It's like, why did we spend all that time there in New York messing with this other person? It's character building on Larry Underwood's part, but honestly, by the time you get to the end of the story, he's not all that important. I mean, he is for the story, but the way this is told, they don't. They go through the trouble of building up this character, and then it's like, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. I do that a lot, don't I? So these characters, let me see if I remember this correctly. You've got Stu, Franny, Glenn, Ray, and Nick. They have all been seeing these visions that are from Mother Abigail, Whoopi Goldberg, and she's telling them to come out to Boulder, Colorado. This is where the survivors are going to come and restart humanity, etc., etc. And you people have been chosen to be the people to lead these people out of darkness, etc. So, of course, part of this is they all end up in Boulder. But they do this weird time jump thing where, oh, we're in Boulder in the future, Franny's pregnant, what the heck? And then they kind of end up jumping back and forth again, and we're left going, wait, what's going on? And then they stop this whole time jumping thing after a few episodes, and it's like, well, again, why did we have to do it that way? It doesn't make any sense to do that and then just go, no, they could have been doing flashbacks through the entire thing. It would have made more sense. I think it would have made more sense if they'd have been doing flashbacks throughout the entire thing to explain bits that were relevant to the characters at the time. Something happens to a character, oh my god, and then flashback to something that would have, made, oh, okay, that makes more sense, doesn't it? Kind of like, this character Lloyd. Yeah, this is where I talk about wasted characters right here. Is this character named Lloyd. We meet him, we get a nice backstory on this Lloyd character, right? He's kind of a not entirely, with it upstairs, a little crazy, a little stupid, gets thrown in jail, and who shows up? This is kind of our first introduction to Flag too, is for real anyway. There was a couple of scenes before where he shows up in this visions to I think it's Harold, of course. Harold is Harold is supposed to be the baddie. Yeah, we'll get there too. In those couple of visions, and then Flag just shows up at this prison and talks Lloyd into being his, he, does his thing, convinces Lloyd to come with him and be his, right-hand man, etc. And then the rest of the episode, Lloyd is kind of this comedic sidekick clowny guy, and he just gets, spoilers here, Lloyd just gets clocked in the head by a falling beam and he's done. It's kind of like, well, why did we really have to bother with this whole backstory on Lloyd? We could have just been, oh, there's this guy in prison named Lloyd. He's a toady, and then he gets killed later. He doesn't really have that much of a role to play in this miniseries, and it could have just been, we didn't need that stuff. There's, like I said, wasted space in this that could have been used for other purposes. But yeah, the throwaway characters, and then like Nick. Nick is another one. I think we actually had a little bit of backstory on him. And he's there with them. He's the guy with the eye patch, can't hear. He has some interactions with the rest of the leaders, and he's kind of the voice of reason, and then he just gets blown up and killed, and oh, that's the end of Nick. And we're left going, well, okay. And the whole thing is kind of has moments like that where the character's introduced, built up a little bit. I think Dana was another one, where we had this little vignette backstory where she got rescued by, I think it was Stu. Then she goes into Vegas to confront, there's like one episode where that happened, and then she gets killed, and it's like, well, okay. In the book, if I remember right, all of these things were explored in much more detail and much more relevance to the whole story. And in this thing, they're just kind of like, yeah, let's just do that and get it over with. Let's just do that and get it over with. And then there's the whole thing with Flag going to Vegas, making this empire of it. It felt like the city that, in Road Warrior or something. These just absolute lunacy and decadence. And maybe that was the point. Was it was supposed to feel like that? But it was, I don't know. It felt clownish to me, for lack of a better word. It was like, oh, let's make the most ridiculous caricature of evil in Las Vegas we can think of, and that's just people being, orgies in the streets and drinking and doing whatever they pretty much feel like, do what thou wilt type of stuff, which I guess that makes kind of sense given who Flag is supposed to represent here. But like I said, the whole thing just felt clownish and stupid. And then we get to the ending, and the whole thing with, talking about Trashy, that he gets sent off to do this other task, but winds up bringing back a freaking nuclear warhead, and that stuff's in the book. That's cool. But the scene in the movie, there's this big cloud comes in, and these lightning bolts, and I honestly didn't know if that was Flag doing this, or if that was supposed to be whether Abigail or some other external force. It was like, where is this big cloud storm thing coming in and enveloping the building? Where is this coming from? What is this? I don't have a clue. And instead of Flag being the one that sets off the bomb, this lightning storm kills a bunch of people. It kills the Julie character, Catherine McNamara, another one introduced for some purpose, and then just killed. That's like, why did we spend time introducing this character to us when it doesn't even matter? And I just bumped the camera. I don't know, there's the entirety of, like I said, the entire Vegas scene just was there just to throw a certain amount of nudity and decadence into it. It's like, why? I get what you're trying to do there, but we could have spent the screen time on other things and told the story. The Stand here is kind of like, Lord of the Rings in that aspect. You got Peter Jackson took 12 hours of cinema time to tell the story, and he still left a bunch out that should have been there, and changed some things that he shouldn't, but, it all worked out in the end. This was roughly 8 hours, 9 hours, and we're just going, why did we spend time doing these things here, And then we get to the end, and I'm sitting here at the end of this last episode going, wait a minute, I don't remember any of this happening. And turns out the last episode of this, and this is kind of interesting to me, is it was written by Stephen King, and it's kind of a new chapter to the story, if you will, where Stu and Franny and the baby, they take off cross-country headed back to Maine. There's this whole scene where she falls in a well, and Mother Abigail is reincarnated as this young girl. I'm assuming they don't actually say that, but we're kind of left to, yeah, that must be what that is. Helps Stu get back to her, rescues her, and this is, while Franny's down in the well, she has this episode with Flag. This is where she makes her stand against Flag, and I think the reason he did this, from what I was reading, when I was like, wait a minute, this is, I had to look this up, why did he do this, was to give, in the book, Franny was pregnant through most of it, and in here too, everybody else takes off towards Flag, leaving her and the baby alone there in Boulder, but I think he needed to give her a bigger role in the end of this, and actually send Flag off to this tropical island. He had a new name, and I can't remember what it was. I tried to remember, and I couldn't find it right here. I didn't want to spend the whole time looking it up, but I'm wondering if they're somehow trying to figure out how to make a sequel by introducing the new young Mother Abigail, sending Flag off to this island. I don't know if it's supposed to be in the past or if the present, this undiscovered tribe type of thing. Are they setting up something? Stephen King got something in mind. Hey, I want to make a little bit more to this story. I don't know. That might be interesting if it is, but please, if you're going to do that, do it right. This was not done right. There were a lot of good moments in this. There was a lot of it where we're just sitting here going, I don't know why we had to do this, guys. Would I recommend watching this? If you're a big fan of The Stand, maybe. It might, wreck your, what's the word I'm looking for? Your expectations might be too high for it if you've read it and remember it. I didn't remember it completely. I remember reading it and some of the big points in it, and I was like, oh yeah, I remembered some of that when it happened. I had to go look the Cliff Notes up to see what had changed, and it was like, oh wow, yeah, I remember that. Why didn't that get done right? Why did that get changed? There's another little plot line where Nadine Cross gets impregnated by Flag, and I'm guessing this was supposed to be some kind of parallel to Stu and Franny's child, the new Prince of Darkness that was supposed to be, Flag's kid, and she just jumps out the window and kills it, and it's like, well, that's over now, isn't it? And it's like, why couldn't we go further into that? I mean, granted, that was right before everything fell apart. Oh, this is another thing. I'm trying to figure out to say this in my head. I had it figured out, and then I don't know. Stephen King has a way of making the stories about, like, for example, It. The end of It, the only reason that they defeated him was they took the, alien / clown, they took his power away by not, fearing him. And that, I don't remember if this was the book. For some reason, I'm thinking it wasn't. And I don't know if King put this back into this, or if that was there and I'm not remembering it. Please, correct me in the comments below if that's so. Was the whole reason Flag was, ended here instead of his being accidentally doing this in his grandeur, which I think was how the book went off. This was all the people there realizing, I will fear no evil, oh crap, and they're taking away that power from Flag, and that was how he was defeated. I mean, that's cool, I guess. I don't think, like I said, if I'm remembering this wrong, please tell me below and I'll make some sort of correction to this. I mean, it was a cool thing, but at the same time was like, is that really how it went? I don't remember. It wouldn't surprise me, though, being Stephen King stuff. That's kind of how his stuff goes, was that, taking power away from the baddies and giving it back to the good guys at the end. Okay, fair play there. So what am I going to rate this at? I'm thinking I'm going to give this a 2.0. I'm not going to totally crap on it. It had its moments, but then again, you know, these characters, you know, they start to get built up and they're just left. It just feels like they just cut them off and we're left hanging with these characters. And the story too, like I said, this should have been 20 hours long instead of 8, 9. I don't know what else to say about that, guys. 2.0, go watch it if you want to, but honestly, unless you're a, you know, diehard fan, don't waste the time investing in 9 episodes of the show. That's about all I have to say about that. So this has been Sci-Fi Review. Oh, and if you're wondering where the Stephen King cameo is, look for a sign that they pass along the road for a place called Hemingford Home. You'll see him sitting at the table there. He's almost always got something like that in a movie, and that's where it is.